I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is Pete Thomas, and I had the pleasure of meeting Pete back in October. I spoke to a joint group that included Pete's group that he's just starting, and I got to meet Pete. Pete is an incredible Vistage chair in the state of Michigan. He is, as we record this, he's just a few weeks away from launching his very first group. CE group, so very excited about that. And by the time the world consumes this, Pete, you will be a fully minted Vistage chair. That probably feels pretty good.
It absolutely does. It feels great, coming from CEO of a software company, now being able to assist other CEOs in their journey. It does. I like the language that you use, right? It be fully minted. I feel golden. I really
Okay.
do. I feel golden. And I
And
wanted to
and and
thank
for
you,
those of us
Eric.
can see you're wearing the right jacket for it.
That's right. I just happen to be, and I'm living in Ann Arbor, and we just happened to have beat Ohio State this past weekend. The
It's all
world is
right.
pretty good. It's all right
It's
right now.
it's all
It
right. I like it.
is.
And so you are in Michigan, and for those that don't
That's right.
know, Vistage, Michigan is a slightly different
That's
animal
right. Yeah.
than the Vistage that most of the rest of us participate in.
Yeah.
What's the can you give us the quick like 10-second briefing on what makes Vistage, Michigan different and
Absolutely, absolutely. So the unique differences here in Michigan is our CE groups, we have 9 meetings per year, whereas if you're outside of Michigan, you tend to have 12 meetings per
yes.
year. They're just different, whether it be a different franchise or different licensing. I don't fully understand how that works. However, a member who is a member of a CE group here in Vistage, Michigan, is still a member of Vistage worldwide. You still have access to 22,000 other members who are online at any one time, and the majority of it runs in a similar fashion, right? We're former CEOs, former executives who tend to lead these groups of other executives. The group size is similar to Vistage worldwide. It just happened to be that our Vistage Michigan was founded about 60 years ago, Vistage Worldwide about 65 years ago. So we've been along for the journey right from the very beginning, and they're a great, amazing group of Vistage chairs here in Michigan who have been mentoring me and who will continue to mentor me as we help CEOs to, as you see in the background, make better decisions, right?
Yep.
Generate quicker results and increase sales and to be great leaders, right?
I
That's
like I
that's our
like the third
overall
one.
goal. There
Increase
we go.
sales. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Constantly, we're looking for that, right? We're looking for that. That's right. And
And
that's one of the key things about Michigan, about
yeah.
Vistage in general, of course. Vistage members typically have 2.2 times greater sales or greater revenues rather than non-Vistage members. And that data has been verified by Dun and Bradstreet. So there's real benefit of being a part of a Vistage group. And we've been around for 65 years. The proof is in the pudding, and the model works.
And I absolutely agree with that. I've been a
Absolutely.
member since 2019, and I
There we
can vouch
go.
for Vistage, Michigan. I got to speak
Yes.
to two amazing groups while I was there last
Yes,
month.
absolutely. And
So
I wanted to personally thank you for that because I was able to use your presentation in talking to other potential members, right? When you think about marketing and advertising and how they merge together, as I've explained to someone, you did not come here and simply talk about running a Facebook ads or click rates or those types of things. You dealt with the subject from a very high level, right? How to understand, the lifetime customer value, right? Customer acquisition cost, the things that we as leaders should be thinking about at the high level, and how to get your how to set your total budget for your marketing team and your sales team, right? How to bring all of that together. So I wanted to compliment you and
Well,
thank you for
I,
that presentation. It
I,
was
I,
very
I
good.
appreciate that, and it feels like I need to disclaim that I have not paid you in any way
That's right. That's
for
right.
that endorsement.
You
That's
have not.
incredible. Thank you.
You
No,
have not.
I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate that, and that's super
Absolutely.
gratifying for me because that's actually
Yeah.
why I do it. It's
Awesome.
being a Vistage speaker, it's not a lucrative gig, but I like to change people's minds and I like meeting people, and
Yes.
so it's really
Yes.
cool. So
Absolutely.
you're about to launch your first group. Um,
Yes.
how has that process been for you? And talk me through the trials, the tribulations, the
Yeah. Yes.
victories.
Absolutely.
I know it's a journey.
So it's interesting. It has been a journey. I left I was CEO of a software company here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I resigned from the company. I'd spent the prior couple of years preparing the company for exit. It was a family-owned company, and I was not in the family, and so prepared the company for exit. Learning the dynamics of a family-run business, it was just mind-blowing to me. It was the preparation that I did not know I needed, right? Because they're family dynamics that are just beyond what you would experience in running a normal company. And when I walked away from that, I decided I needed to challenge myself. And so I applied to a program at Harvard Business School online. And so I signed up to take accounting and finance, economics, and statistics all together, Eric, all together. And so I spent about 7 months of 2023 doing that. And during that time, I was on a flight back from Washington, D.C. to Michigan, and a gentleman sitting in my row, he said, Pete, you should consider Vistage. And it was like I had not heard of Vistage to that point. However, I'd always had my own executive coach. When I investigated Vistage and when I walked into the first room as a guest the first time, maybe September of 2023, I fell in love. And Eric, I fell in love because Vistage members, these CEOs, were challenging each other and holding each other accountable to really be great, to not just sit in the seat, right? But to be great in terms of their leadership, in terms of their strategic planning, in terms of their decision making, and those leaders were challenging each other. So I knew that no matter what, this was the place for me, right? And then comes the journey. So introducing yourself to executives, right, and getting time on an executive's calendar, right?
Right.
That of course is a challenge in presenting the model, the Vistage model, which is unique, which is absolutely amazing. It takes time, and so it's been a journey of meeting people and people saying, "Hey, I'm interested." My time, for example, met a gentleman and he says, I was a member of Vistage in Colorado. I moved to Michigan. Pete, I'm ready to go. But my business is taking off right now. I'm happy I'm in the lending space, right? And they were just taking off. They said, let's circle back around in the fall. I'm 40% over revenues, year over year revenues. And I meet with him in the fall. Pete, I'm up 100% over last year. It's going to be a couple of more months, but I'm coming, right? And so what can you do? I can't be upset. I'm excited
No.
about the guy. But here's the thing that I did. I scheduled time with him. I said, we're going to grab, which is in the next couple of days, actually, we're going to grab breakfast. And I said, listen, this is when we sit down for breakfast, the thing that I want to know about is how are you going to manage yourself
Right.
during this growth phase, right? We know that you're going to be excellent in terms of your leadership with the business, but I want to make sure that you get through this growth phase. You've got your health intact, you've got your relationships intact, right? Everything else on the plate is not falling off the plate. And that's what Vistage does. If the business needs attention, we're gonna pay attention to the business. If the leader himself and his family needs attention, we're gonna pay attention to that. And that there, Eric, that being able to shift focus between the leader and the business and the strategic and the tactical, that's made this journey
Right.
incredibly enjoyable. And so I happen to be today. I'm in one of my CE members. I'm in their office. So after the conversation with you today, I'll switch over and we'll have our one-to-one coaching
Nice.
session. And it's just when I tell you, I wake up in the mornings excited for the day because I'm going to meet a new potential member. I'm going to learn about their business, or I'm going to go to one of my current members and learn how they're growing or expanding their business or how they're overcoming the challenges. When I go home every evening, I felt like I have just been blessed with this opportunity to help others. And I'm doing what I absolutely love and I'll be doing for the rest of my
And I believe that 100%. And by the way, I've heard it said many times that, and in different ways, and I'll paraphrase, but that if you think that now is not the right time for you to be in a peer group
That's right.
situation, that's absolutely the right time.
Absolutely right. And you mentioned that we of course Vistage we do tons of research with our members, and the number one point of feedback that we get from our members is I should have joined earlier. Right?
Right.
It's we call it being as leaders, we call it being down in the weeds. When you're down in the weeds, the question is, when will you come out of the weeds? Many times you need someone to help you come out of the weeds. You need a peer group, you need a coach. And Vistage provides just that. So yeah, today is the day. It is the best day to join a Vistage group.
I'm sure you're, should get that like cross stitched into a pillow for you.
I love
Today is
that.
the day.
Today is the best day to join a Vistage group. I love it.
When when you talk about your journey being going for the first time into a family business,
Yes.
which ended up being your last stop before
Yes.
Vistage, well, with Harvard in between. Harvard.
Well,
Um,
online, Harvard Business School
it's okay.
online. It
It's
was
okay.
online.
It's still Harvard.
And it was still hard. It
Yeah,
was hard. Yes,
I'm very
absolutely.
confident that that's true. You I assume that experience sort of uniquely prepared you to then
Mm.
jump into a Vistage type of environment where you're dealing with all types of varieties of not just family businesses, but in many cases very closely
Yes,
held businesses.
yes, absolutely right. Well, Eric, it's interesting you mentioned that. I have yet to find a business that was more challenging in terms of the interpersonal relationships than what I left, right?
Right.
Because of the contention between generations. It really, for me, was a master class in cultural clash, right? When I tell you and I just absolutely love the family, still communicate with them. The owner reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. He's like, Pete, I want to run something by you. I just
Yeah.
absolutely love them. But for me, it was incredibly enlightening, incredibly challenging. And I have a love of family businesses, even at the highest level. Someone was
Right.
recently asked, I've done work with Pilot Travel Centers, which used to be owned by the Haslams, right? Before they sold off to Berkshire Hathaway, a big fan of the Ingram family who started Ingram Micro
Yep.
and at the Ingram Book Group, right? And so had a chance to spend time with Martha and her son years ago. Big fan, right? But when there were challenges inside the family, that was for me was preparatory. So
Right.
now when I'm working with any, whether it be a closely held, which of course we do, closely held business or any business of any type, there's nothing quite like the contention that I faced in my previous role. But I just love it. I love it. I love the fact that I went through that journey. We got them to a place where they needed to be, and yeah, every step since then it's been a tad bit easier, to be honest.
How has the transition been for you between being an executive and
Uh-huh.
you CEO,
That's right.
you're you're the guy at the control panel,
That's right.
um, and now you've transitioned into a role where you don't ever even see the control panel. You're just talking to the pilot and you're
Absolutely right.
trying to help them be the best pilot that they can be.
Absolutely.
How has that transition been for you, and where's
Yeah.
that been challenging? Where's that been fun?
And that's a very good question. The area that it's been challenging is for me to sit in my own uniqueness, my own space, right? So I mentioned, I took a class, I took accounting and finance, economics and
Yep.
statistics all together. What that has meant is every time I'm talking to one of my executives at the end of a quarter, right? Our one-on-one meetings, we're going to talk financials. Right. And the different members, my different CE members will do different things. Some members will send their financials over. Let's review everything, right? Let's pull out your cash flow statement. Let's look at the P&L. Let's see how things are going. And that accountability
Right.
has been, oh my goodness, they love it, right? Some folks say, hey, I've looked at it, everything's in line. My utilization rate of some of my people is a little off, but I realize where that's coming from. And so what it's been about, Eric, it's about me walking into who I am. I really feel like I'm serving these leaders to hold them accountable to be the absolute best that they can be. So I don't have to drive the ship as long as I can get up next to the captain and I can talk to the captain and ask the captain, why are you driving it? Or as you mentioned, the
Right.
pilot, why are you
Yeah.
going left? Are you sure you want to go left? Tell me the reasons, and helping them to think through that process. For me, it's incredibly rewarding, incredibly.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
It's I imagine that it's a different set of skills that you're flexing entirely different muscles being in this type of role than you would be as a CEO, and the idea of
Absolutely.
the way that you manage your interpersonal relationships with people is going to be really different. So I imagine it's really rewarding, but it also feels like a pivot that some people probably struggle with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And remember, there's the pivot is this, right? You want to develop a relationship with that executive such that that executive will trust you to hold them accountable, right? In the CEO role, hey, the accountability came from the back. You do what I need you to do. Otherwise, we can prepare the door for you, right? We really
Right.
can find a replacement. Well, this is not that goal, right? It's not that. But the great benefit is my executives, they understand I've sat in that seat. And sat in that seat during COVID. I could remember this, Eric, waking up in the middle of COVID thinking to myself, because I was also director of sales,
Hmm.
CEO, director of sales, waking up in the middle of COVID thinking to myself, if we don't sell 3 systems this week, the owner's sons will not be able to pay their mortgage. So I, as a single guy, had money in the bank, and I'm okay, right? But the owner's sons will not be able to pay their mortgage. And there's a unique thing that a CEO experiences that regular folks just don't. It's not whether or not you can meet payroll. That's
Right.
sounds good, but it's not that. It's what's the effect of not meeting payroll. That means your people will may not be able to buy the food that they need, pay the bills, pay their mortgage, right? It's that downstream effect. And when I can sit with an executive and we can talk in very, very pointed terms about the decisions that they're making, the fact that they trust me to challenge them. I mean, I have to say that I'm blessed to have them trust me in that way. And I don't take that trust lightly.
And I think that you said a lot of really good things there. And there's
Yeah.
one thing that you mentioned at least two times, maybe
Yeah.
three, that you feel blessed to be in the position that you're in.
Yeah.
And I had listened to a podcast that you were on that
Mm.
where you talked about your childhood
Yes.
and the various things that you went through in your childhood, which
Mhm. Mhm.
are uncommon for you've got the same sort of story as a lot of people that we hear about for other reasons. and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what if you could just take a couple of minutes and talk
Mhm.
through the some of the things that you went through when you were growing up and how they inform the person that you are today.
Yeah.
I think that would be like really meaningful because you don't meet a lot of, and I've been in a position where I've been fortunate to
Mhm,
meet and know not only a lot of people through Vistage, but a lot of
mhm.
executives,
Yeah.
a lot of people who have been very successful in the world, and a lot of their stories don't start like yours.
Yeah, yeah, I can believe that, and thank you for asking that. Just in a short form, my mother, upon my birth, was struggling with mental illness. So she had a combination of paranoia and psychosis, and just struggled with a mental illness. And it was a result of head trauma, head wounds. She had been beaten really badly. And so when I was born into that environment, what that meant is that my life, my upbringing was going to be one where I was transient. So my mother and I, we lived in 13 different cities by the time I was 13 years old. And what that meant was not just inside the cities, but different locations in the city. So now in foster care, they call them placements, but I would live in a foster
Right.
care. My mom would discover where I was and come and abduct me out, and we just moved around. So I'm talking about, born in Cleveland, Ohio, lived in Shaker Heights, Washington, D.C., Detroit, Michigan, Pontiac, Arlington, Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, just lived all over the place. Very transient lifestyle until I was approximately eighth grade. At eighth grade, I was in a group home in Lansing, Michigan, and one day the administrators come and say, "Hey, somebody's coming tomorrow to get you," and I have no idea who that might be. Come to find out, it's someone who's taken me into their home on the east side of Detroit, and they're fostering me. I ended up being a foster child there for a year before they adopted me, and so. The interesting thing about that part of the story, there's two components to that. One, I'm on the east side of Detroit right as the crack epidemic is taking
Yes.
off, full force. But I was stable at just the right time in my life. And so here at this time, I could focus on and concentrate on school, whereas before I had attended maybe a year and a half of schooling up to that point, but now I could focus on school. So the fact that I could focus on school meant that I had a chance to do very well in National Honor Society, who's who among American high school students, all of that stuff, right? They accepted into every college. But it was critical for me to leave that environment because the crack epidemic was so destructive that literally my friends did not make it out. And so I leave from that environment and move up to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I've stayed ever since. Now, to answer your question directly, how has that prepared me for this? For one, I just have a fearless nature. Let's have a fearless now, Eric. I'll have to say, in a level of vulnerability, some fearlessness is not good, right? And so
Understood.
I, I'm a divorced man, right? And I told my wife, I said, one of our ventures, right? One of the ventures, honey, if this doesn't work out, well, if we lose our house, well, we could just move in with the neighbors, right? They just built a new house and they've got a great basement. Eric, that does not go over well, right? That level of fearlessness does not go over well. Uh, but what it
Do you
does
like
foster,
camping? That's
exactly right, exactly right in the living room, exactly right. But Eric, what that does foster is a fearlessness just that's ideal to take certain chances, and it also fosters a resilience, which happens to line up almost perfectly with the leaders that are part of this. There's a resilience, there is a stick-to-itiveness, and there's this overcoming mindset that is part and parcel with the executives in the room. And so once I got my bearings on how I was going to operate as an entrepreneur and then as an executive, right? Those things from my past really helped me in the future. Also, here's something that's really interesting. Well, I'll find it interesting. Along my journeys, when I was with my mom and we spent time homeless and all of that, one of the best places to be, Eric, when you're homeless is in a library. So I spent, just hundreds and hundreds of days inside of a library and developed this love of reading. So I had a meeting like last week with an executive, and we were just talking about books, right? Whether it be Grit, 4DX, Four Disciplines of Execution, Little Giants, read all of these books. I just had a love of business books, a love of reading, a love of business books, and have read all of them over the years. And so that also helps the conversation when I'm speaking with an executive, because we'll talk about something practical that they're dealing with. And then I said, well, I can remember this from a book. Would this be applicable to you, or should we think of something else? Right. And of course, as a coach, you're laying out options. You're not telling them which way to go. But I don't know that I would have that base of knowledge if I had had a different type of upbringing. Right. And it's because you can learn from a corporate world, from the corporate space, but the learning doesn't, it doesn't have to be solid learning. And I feel like I had a great background in that regard. Not from the,
Right,
from the homelessness piece was not
right,
great.
right.
But it
Um,
was great to learn in that fashion, to develop a love of learning that stuck with me throughout my life.
I imagine and so if this is do not let me put words in your
Oh,
mouth
no,
at
of
all,
course. Yeah.
but as being in the kind of situations that
Mhm.
you were in and bouncing around as much as you were, and um, I imagine that it's difficult to
Mhm.
trust a lot of people,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then to end up in a role where, I
Mhm.
mean, as any kind of leader, as any kind of executive, part of that part of that success comes from being able to have like a
That's right.
mutual trust.
Absolutely.
Was that tough for you, or
Very
how
good,
did you
very good
develop that?
question. Very good question, and a very good last part of that question. So, at the very beginning, you do not trust anyone, because you have to think about it in this way. If the relationship with your mother is flawed, right? Never met my father, but if the relationship with your mother is flawed, who is there for you to trust? There is no one to trust.
Right.
And so that can carry with you for throughout your life. And I have to put this in here, is when I was 23 years old, I developed a relationship with Jesus Christ and gave my life to Christ. And that was the start of the healing process. And then I would constantly be challenged, right? Either by a preach message or something that I read in the word of God, the Bible. And then what happened, Eric, this is what's so critical. Instead of thinking I can't trust anyone, I began to rethink about the people that were trustworthy along the way.
Right.
Every time I went into a foster home, first of all, let's think about this, right? There are people out here who will take strangers into their home, feed them, clothe them, and
Right.
provide bedding for them, right?
Right.
And so now, from a business standpoint, I work with executives right now, and they work with citizens, or they work with folks who leave prison, right? And provide jobs for them. Think about
Yes.
that. And so it really takes a mindset shift. And that's what happened to me along this journey, where I began to see people differently, not as someone that I could not trust, but I began to see the greatness in humanity. And that's how I ultimately walk through life now, right? I see the greatness when I'm talking to an executive, and they talk about what they're doing for the holiday season. They're lining up all of the different places they're going to donate, and then they extend it not just from the holidays, but as a part of what they do for the culture of their organization. They do feeding programs, they go out
Right.
and do these different things. It started exactly like you mentioned, Eric, exactly. But then that transition happened, that mind shift happened, to where I began to see the beauty in humanity. And that's kind of where I am now.
Pete, thank you so much for being my guest
Absolutely.
today. I've really enjoyed
Absolutely.
this, and you've been a real pleasure to talk to, and thank you for being vulnerable. I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Thank you for querying me. I appreciate that as well.
It,
Thank you.
if folks want to get in touch with you, if they want, if they've got questions about Vistage, if they've got questions
Absolutely.
about your group, if they just want to know you, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. The quickest and simplest way is you can always go to LinkedIn, linkedin.com/the the Pete Thomas.
The
Or you
Pete
can email.
Thomas, not
That's
just
right.
a Pete Thomas,
The
but
one and only, I
the
guess.
Pete Thomas.
That's right.
So,
There's a famous drummer that used to drum with the Beatles. We're not counting him, but yeah, the Pete Thomas. And also, you can always email me, Pete Thomas at VistageMichigan.com, Pete Thomas at VistageMichigan.com, or
awesome.
Pete at PeteThomas.com. Either one. That's even simpler. Pete at PeteThomas.com.
Well, again, a big thank you to the Pete Thomas for being my guest, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you as well. Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.